Feel free to sit down too if you guys would like. I'll start this off with a journey. Several years ago, an economist and anthropologist were studying different cultures across the globe to see how many hours a day they had to work and how many hours a week they had to put into working in order to meet their basic needs. And they had found themselves in the Kalahari Desert. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but it's one of the harshest climates on our planet. One of the most difficult places in order to thrive and survive. So they're in the Kalahari Desert studying the Bushmen that lived there and watching them as they went about their daily tasks that they needed to do to meet their needs. And they'd been watching for about 2 or 3 weeks and watching as the guys went out and gathered food and came back and the women did about their business. And they had noticed when all the guys left, there's one guy that routinely and consistently stayed back. And they were curious about this. So one of the days they approached what looked like to be one of the leaders of the guys going out, and they're like, hey, how do you feel about this guy staying back at the tribe and not going out with you guys? They're like, well, we don't understand. He's like, well, you guys go out there, get all the food, you bring it back, he still gets to eat the food with you, but he didn't go out with you. They're like, we still don't understand what you were trying to say. They're like, okay, so you go out there, you do all the stuff you don't want to do, and then you come back with food and he still gets to eat it. They said, yes, of course, he's hungry. What is the problem? Like, well, don't you understand? You did all this stuff you didn't want to do, and he still gets to take in the benefit of it. They're like, oh, no. We do that because we love doing it. If he doesn't want to come with us, he doesn't have to. So here's this ideology in this culture that they didn't have this concept of work, this concept of doing something you didn't want to do because you had to. I mean, we look at the kids playing football on the field and we say, oh, look how much fun they're having out there, and we almost feel bad for the kids standing on the sideline not joining them. We don't go, oh my gosh, why are those kids still standing on the sideline? They don't have to be out there running around and they still get in the halftime snacks. Like, no, we don't think that way. We say, look how much fun they're having. And this is something that's possible in one of the harshest climates on our planet. And we see today where we're working more and more hours every day of our lives dedicated to this concept of trying to meet our basic needs when many needs aren't even being met. And we want to see what is the foundation of this crisis that we're experiencing. And I think that foundation lies in our financial system, as mundane and boring as that sounds. I don't know how many of you are familiar with how our financial system works, but in the last decade, central banks made over $12 trillion US worth of wealth, essentially. Did any of you get that money? No? Okay. Did either of you get a say on whether or not that money should be created? How any of that money should be spent? Did any of you loyal US dollar users or euro users or Indonesian rupiah users get any of that money for supporting those economies? That's strange. So then why do we keep using these currencies? And it might be because there wasn't solid alternatives. So you may have been hearing about blockchain and cryptocurrency and this big weird sounding movement, but it all came out of the ideology that we can create currency that nobody owns, that we can use ourselves, and that we can deliver this value however we choose. And that's the new concept here. And what I think could be a very profound solution to a lot of our crises is, why don't we deliver some of our collective wealth to solving some of these crises? Over 5.2 trillion of the collective wealth we made in the last decade, actually shorter than that, went to subsidizing oil and gas industries to make them cheaper than renewable energy so we can keep destroying our planet at an exponential rate. So we want to turn that around. We want to create a financial system that as it grows, as it's expanding, we're generating more wealth and directing it towards the regeneration of our planet, towards connecting each other, towards rewarding us for participating in it. Because a big crisis today is having to make a decision. A big conflict today is having to make a decision between what's best for you and the planet and what's best for your pocket, or best for your wallet. Right now, and typically, those are in conflict. Which is why we see a lot of the crises we're experiencing today. One very potent one being the burning of the Amazon right now. That's intentionally taking place because someone in some position is having to make a decision between destroying the Amazon or growing the economy, making more money. And someone in that position, I don't know if they want to be making that decision, but they are, and that's a decision that our system is having them make. And the outcome of those fires is him choosing to do what's best for the economy, opposed to what's best for our planet and what's best for the thrivability of all species. So right now, those things are in conflict. So the concept behind seeds is to unite those, to build an alternative financial system that rewards us for participating in it, generates wealth for us to be able to decide how we want to direct that towards projects that can heal our Earth, fix our planet. Because so many of those projects that need to happen and need to take place aren't profitable. It's not profitable to clean up the beach. It's not profitable to replant native forests with no intention of cutting them down. It's not profitable to do the healing our planet needs, which is why, for several decades of us understanding this, it hasn't been done. So I don't think we're going to find a solution, even though we might have a couple, Dakota, about ways of making it profitable to heal our planet. So we're creating a system that as we grow $12 trillion worth of wealth, we can say, hey, let's take 250 billion of that and end world hunger. Thank you, Earth Nation. Great, now we have 13 trillion left over. What do we want to do? Okay, let's take 4 trillion of that and give it to our most impoverished people so that they don't have to live day to day and not get their basic needs met. Great, we still have 8 trillion left over. And this is without having any impact on our day-to-day life. This is our current financial system that we're already using, so it's not like some form of weird communism. This is what's happening. So we have this wealth that we can be distributing, taking care of all these needs, and none of our needs need to be taken away. We don't need to take money out of our own pocket to pay for this to happen. So some of you have heard of Bitcoin. So I'm trying to give you a real-world example of how this is possible. Bitcoin generated about 198 billion US dollars worth of wealth. That's how much it's worth. Anyway. It generates about 9 billion US dollars worth of Bitcoin each year. This is Bitcoin that's just magically made into existence and delivered to people for doing mining and all these weird things that you don't understand, I'm sure. But the idea is that it's making 9+ billion US dollars a year and delivering it how people choose. And this is what's possible. So we're saying instead of delivering that money to pay mining fees and electricity costs, which is what Bitcoin's doing, we're saying we're going to generate wealth and let the people decide how we should spend that money. And the only cap we're going to put on that is we're saying 25% of that is earmarked for grants for regenerative projects. So now projects that are doing the most regeneration for our planet can compete, not for who's most profitable, but how best they can regenerate it and tell their ideas and get sold and get everyone to vote for them, essentially. But now we have a revenue stream to be able to finance these projects. And we can take some more of that money and give it to local co-ops so that people can collectively start buying assets. So it's like Kickstarter, but without having to pull money out of your pocket, you can just vote for the things that you want. So it'd be like your local community getting together, your local governance, and saying, hey, we're actually going to open up the local community and say that you all own everything that we own. And now you get to manage our budget. What do we, as a community, actually want to buy? It's no longer having these leaders making these decisions and then choosing to kick those leaders out when they don't represent you. It's voting directly for ourselves on the way we want our collective wealth spent. Aside on our governance systems, it may have made sense once upon a time to have someone represent you when you had to get on a horse, ride for 3 days to get into a coliseum and shout real loud and expect to get heard. So back in the days before the internet, it kind of made sense to have a representative democracy system. But today we have the internet, we have ways of direct communication, we don't need anyone to represent us anymore. So it's no longer, a task of trying to find the most righteous leader in order to lead us. Because I really think the reality is the people who want to lead and want that level of position, they're probably not the people who ought to be leading us anyway. And I really think the solution isn't in trying to reform our current system either. As Buckminster Fuller said, the solution is making the old system obsolete, not trying to reform it. So, bringing it back into this. That's the revolution, the Renaissance, I actually like to call it. an aside on that, just because I'm all full of tangents. I think the concept of a revolution is one where someone in lower power rises up against the people in power and takes them down and replaces that power structure to then put their foot on the people they just took over, right? That's what a revolution is. It's just this endless cycle of changing who's in power, but not actually changing the paradigm that they're operating within. Why a renaissance is something a bit different. It's where all people, all positions of power realize that there's a better alternative for everyone, and then they just leave that system behind and step into a new model that works better for all of the people. It's not the 99% versus the 1%. It's not the conscious people versus the greedy people. It's all of us together stepping into something that works better for everyone. Yeah. Good. So what we've been doing for the last 3+ years, since I've been in Bali, is just creating this financial layer and making this possible for us to be able to step into a new financial system with new currencies, with new governance systems, and actually get rewarded for using your currency and making payments and kind of doing everything you're already doing. I guess I can help ground this. It's kind of like joining PayPal, but instead of paying fees when you're a business for using PayPal, you get paid to do it. And instead of me handing you $20 in cash in order to pay you and getting no benefit from it, now I can pay you on this system and actually get rewarded for doing it. Because the more I use this and the more I contribute to the system, the more of that money that we're making, that $12 trillion, is going to you. Does that make sense? And to help ground this concept, we're not just inflating money out of nowhere. All we're doing, a little bit more context, in Bitcoin, when more people join Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin goes up. Everyone knows that, right? So that's kind of the urge for people to join Bitcoin. It's like, hey, the price is going to go up, go in early, and then you can take advantage of the price going up. The problem with that is that a very few people own a ridiculous amount of Bitcoin. So every time that Bitcoin goes up by $1, those people get way more wealth than the people who joined later, or the people who didn't have enough wealth to get enough Bitcoin. So all that system does is concentrate wealth into, again, fewer and fewer hands. It's not a renaissance, it's a revolution. So we want to do something similar. As more people are joining this new financial system, instead of the price of that currency going up, we create more currency, so the price remains stable. One that looks more like a currency, it gives us more faith that the value is going to remain stable too, so it actually helps us use it for everyday purchase. 2, it's not concentrating wealth. And 3, it's generating this financial pool that we can then deliver towards collective projects, regenerating our planet, and doing all these really beautiful things that we'd like to do, but we can't find money for. And that's it. Sorry, there's one more piece. This sounds like a monumental thing that people ask, well, who's behind this? This is a great question. So we can't create a financial system that's decentralized and works for everyone if the people behind it were, 5 people behind a closed doors in a small company doing it, right? So we are actually people building seeds. It's called HIFA. And what it is decentralized autonomous organization. You might have heard of these things. But essentially it's an online digital co-op that literally anyone can show up to this party, start giving their value to help build this system, and get financially compensated for doing it. So there's no barrier to entry other than your will to show up, bring whatever value you're wanting to bring, and it getting accepted by the community at large for that value that you're bringing. So this isn't us doing it, we're creating open source code that we've created for everyone to be part of this renaissance, so we can all participate in creating a new system that's going to better work for us and our children. And that's it.